Hello, and welcome to Living Her Legacy, a podcast that celebrates and serves mamas who are living their best lives after starting their family. I'm your host, Jill Sutton, and thank you so much for joining today. As always, follow along on Instagram at Living Her Legacy Podcast or at Jill G. Sutton, where we can just communicate a little bit back and forth, or find this over on YouTube at Living Her Legacy. We can also have a little bit more of a two-way conversation over there. I'd love to hear from you guys. I have one quick announcement before we get started, and that is I am looking for some podcast guests. So if you're interested at all in being on the Living Her Legacy podcast as a guest, I would highly encourage you to either reach out to me to chat more about it or go to jillgsutton.com/podcast. There are a few questions that you'll find there that you can fill out, and I will get in contact with you with scheduling for a interview. Today on the podcast, we have Paige Fehling. She had a career in news and decided it was time to start her own business and follow in her family's footsteps. She now goes around teaching leadership and communication skills and is doing remarkably well. And you will see why during this interview. She is so fun to listen to. She's so engaging and fun. I hope you guys enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Paige. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I'm so excited for our conversation today. I would love if you would just introduce yourself, maybe tell us a little about you and what you're doing now.
Yes, my name is Paige Fehling, and it is failing pronounced like failing a test. I always like to let people know that because with the way it's spelled, no one ever gets it right the first time, and I don't blame them at all. It's an unfortunate mnemonic to remember the correct pronunciation, but it's the most effective one. I have three kiddos, three doggos, a husband I adore, and a pretty unique living situation in that I say kind of on the same street. It's really, we jokingly call it the family compound. And I guess joking is only sort of halfway joking because it really is like a big plot of land where my brother and my sister-in-law's sister and then our best friends all built houses together. Um, so it's super fun and it's really conducive to our lifestyle, which is pretty crazy and pretty flexible. I 2 years ago left a almost 20-year TV as a television news anchor to launch my own business as a keynote speaker and professional development trainer and MC, which is what I'm doing now and have been. It'll be 2 years in October.
I can't believe it's already been 2 years.
Girl, you and me both.
Oh my goodness.
I
Yes, I
know.
remember when you made the announcement and I didn't know you much personally beforehand, but I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's the but how cool." So tell me about this that you've created. What is this new position you've created, this business you've created?
Well, it's funny, I'm almost kind of back to my roots. I joke that I had a 20-year detour into news from the career that I really always knew I wanted to do all along, which is because my mom and my grandmother did it. I grew up starting at the age of 12, going to class with my mom, sitting in the back of the room doing her flip charts, and then gradually helping to teach portions here and there, and really did that all through high school in my summers and then college. And as I was starting to build my own career here and there, I would teach a class with her or even for her sometimes, if she would get double booked, and kind of thought that's always what I would do. And then I happened into a TV career that I just really loved. And it was something that I couldn't believe I got paid to do. I had so much fun doing it. In some ways, in morning TV, at least, that's what I did. I was on hosted Good Day Charlotte from 4:30 to 9 every day. And I really felt like it was my job to go to work, well, to wake up in the middle of the night. Like that was the tough part, right? I woke up at 1:57 a.m. to go into work and sit around with my best friends drinking coffee and talking about what's going on that day. Kind of like you would meet at a coffee shop, only we had to be more high maintenance with hair and makeup, but only a little bit. I mean, we kind of mailed it in when you start that early, I'll be honest, Jill. But it was wonderful. It was a really, really exceptional career for a very long time, and it was a hard decision to make to leave it, but it was time.
Mhm, mhm. So now you've started your own company. Was your mom and grandmother also in like leadership development?
So my grandmother started doing this when in the 50s she was living in Mississippi, and my grandmother and grandfather had six kids total. My mom's the oldest, the fifth of whom was born with severe special needs,
Mm,
and they chose to have her stay with them at home. At that time it was really common to put a child like that in a full-time
mhm.
care facility, which by the way, wouldn't have blamed them had they done that. Totally understand families who do because she needs full-time care. So my grandparents chose to keep her at home with them, but my grandmother, as any parent can relate, any children at home are hard to do. Like, it just is a lot, right? When you already have 4 and then number 5 comes and has special needs, like, they need around the clock care and help with everything, it's a lot, right? And she turned to my grandfather at one point and said, "I have to get out of this house. I have to do something other than care for these children." And he, quote, unquote, "gave her permission to go down to the junior league and start to teach modeling classes." So that was her big break, okay, right? From these 5 kids, she would go, so she taught people to walk with a book on their head and how to eat with the right fork and all of these manner things. And then a couple years into that, they moved to the DC area. My grandfather was, he was in the military and he was restationed to the Pentagon. And she started to look for ways she could do that there as well. Now
Mm,
it's not the deep south, so there wasn't the same type of like junior league presence and things. So she got plugged in with some government secretarial workers and they said, "Can you teach secretary skills? You know, there's some crossover." And my grandmother was just like the ultimate baller back, like the whole fake it till you make it, fake it till you feel it
yeah.
lady. And she was like, "I sure can." I don't think my grandmother had ever seen a typewriter. I don't know that she'd ever, she certainly had never been a secretary herself, but she was like, "I'm gonna teach myself and I'm gonna teach you." So she would just be asked to learn something and be able to teach it to other folks, and it just built from there. All what they called at the time, they called them soft skills. They now refer to as power
Hmm.
skills,
Hmm.
which are exactly what you're talking about. Things like communication, leadership, anything that kind of ties in with how to be better at what you do and help the people around you do the same.
Excellent. Oh my goodness, that is so fun. That's like the epitome of like confidence and courage blended together. Like,
Right?
sure, I can do that. Like, I always feel like if we all had a little bit of that, like, what could we do, right?
I know, I know.
To have,
I mean, listen, as you know, the motivation to get away and out of your house, away from children who need you constantly is a good motivator to go, "Sure, I will figure this out."
yeah, innovative as moms, I think we are. We will figure it
Amen.
out.
Mhm.
So now, who do you usually present to?
Oh, you name it. It has my clients run the gamut from I just had a call this morning with someone in the banking industry, financial services yesterday with some county leaders. I've recently done a lot in the education space with superintendents and a
Mm,
school leadership across the country. I was in Texas last month for that. I do some in Charlotte as well. Um, I mean, literally, it's all over the place. The hospitality industry. It's kind of, as you learn when you're an entrepreneur and have your own business, when you, especially the type of work I do, when you present to one group or you speak at one conference, hopefully, if things go well, which typically that's how I've gotten all my business, is someone sees me somewhere and says, "Oh, come speak to our people or come do a workshop with us." So then you're all of a sudden in that industry, for a while and until you do something somewhere else, and then you're in that industry and it all kind of snowballs from there. But it's really it is broad in that it is any professional who needs communication skills. There is a training that I do that will be applicable to them, and it is specific in that it is for people specifically looking to have a stronger voice about that, if that makes sense.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, so tying in with this podcast, just being a mama podcast, and one of the things that I kind of went through after having kids was really kind of finding myself again and figuring out like
Mhm.
who I was now that I'm a mama. And a lot of that is finding your voice or putting words to it so that you can speak up for yourselves, right? And take up
Mhm.
space.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you would say to like a mama maybe like that? I mean, I guess one of the things would be communication skills between the spouse or significant other,
Yep.
but also amongst kids. What would maybe be a few tips as far as like how to communicate these new like thoughts or feelings about yourself to someone close to you?
So I think when I think, and do you mean moms who are home with their kids, or do you mean moms who are outside the home working, or kind of
I think
anything?
anything, just because I've done both. I work from home,
Yeah,
but I am home all the time.
yeah, right.
And but I think really just that transition of like, when you've got those young kids, you're like 100% mom, you're 100% go time. That is like your sole purpose is keeping those kids alive. And then there's like, okay, they're getting a little bit more like independent. I can maybe look into my own like things that I love to do again, or maybe like I don't really love this anymore. I want to change this. And
Mhm,
then how do you
mhm.
communicate that? Like, because I feel like, when you're with somebody, a significant other for a long time, sometimes that is hard to like say, I don't
Mm.
do what I used to do anymore. I want to do this. Like, but how do we put a voice to that? How do you maybe like get the courage to like talk that out with somebody?
Oh, I think that's such a good point. You're so right. It's like, how do you look back and go, It was working before, it's not really working anymore, right? Can we kind of adjust this?" To that end, a huge part I think is from the beginning, if and when you're able, picking the right partner. I mean, I could not do my life the way that I do it in any way,
Mm,
shape, or form if I was not married to the man I'm married to. My husband's
hmm
name is Jake,
hmm
and he is in so many I joke Jake is like the biggest, hairiest wife anybody could ever have. We say like he's this giant dude, he's got a beard, he's like a big, but he does this stuff whenever we're at games or if I'm with a group of other moms and everyone's like, "Oh, if my husband would please just have a clue what my kid's teacher's name is even or like what," and I'm like, "Oh, that is in our house? That is Jake. Jake is our calendar inputter. He is the one who responds to the teacher emails. He's better at that stuff. He is really good at the details and the planning
mm,
and the projects. I am not. I do other things. I sort of take his assignments and he says, this is where things need to go or how, who needs to be picked up and taken. And I do it, but he's the one who sort of like runs the ship. So we're a little bit reversed in that way.
hmm
So I would say along the lines of what you were asking, for any moms who can relate to that type of thing, whether that specific situation or not, create your own normal. That was the best
hmm
advice that was ever given to us. And it's so helpful to know if whatever situation you have is working for you, even if it's outside of what you think you should be doing or what the role you should be playing is, if it's working for you, girl, it is working and just roll with it. And if it's
hmm
not, sit down together. If you have a partner, and I know not everyone does, and God bless the people who are doing it on their own, but that open communication is really helpful and being able to appreciate what you're naturally good at and letting those
mm,
people kind of run with that, each partner kind of doing their thing in that way. And I will say too, for moms who are or have been home full time with their kids and outside of the being paid for it by someone else work, because it's still work, you're just not being paid for it in the same way, right? Because I've been there too, I
yes.
know that feeling. And you start to feel like at least I did in some ways, you're like this like societal pariah of people. I'm like, I still have things to talk to you about. Like I can talk about, I do like to talk about my kids. I like to talk about, to discuss that type of thing, but there are other things we can bring up together and be able to talk about. And so you have that still, and people know that. And don't underestimate the skills that you build. The reason that you are home raising your kids for a period or for whenever you have them for the end of eternity, however you choose to do that. Those are skills. If you're good at that, and I wasn't good at it, which is why I didn't do it for very long. But if you are good at that and you do choose to go back into the workforce in an out external capacity, those are skills that are applicable. PS, like for example, I am looking for an assistant right now. And I literally said to a friend the other day, I'm like, I want to hire a mom because moms get I won't say the words so that you have to put explicit tag. Crap, they get stuff done. And
Yeah.
I need someone who can do 5 things at once and remind me to do the things I forget because I suck at that. That's not my skill set. And a lot of moms are really good at that because that's what they've done while their kids are itty bitty and they've juggled work and life and all of that. So don't underestimate those skills. It's not just fluff to say they're interchangeable skills. They really are.
Yeah, I think that's something that is maybe hard to put into words. Again, when you are a mom and you have these skills, but how do they transfer? So, like for
Project
me,
management, Jill. Project management.
yeah,
That's the
project
term, right?
management. Yes. For me, I had that same issue. I was a physical therapist beforehand, and now I've gone into a non-clinical role. But going from a clinic where like everything was hands-on, I knew my stuff. As a PT, I was like, I can do this. This I'm a shoe in. But then going into something else, it was like, how do I market myself with the skills that I have, and how do I rephrase these skills, right?
Mm.
And so that's something that I think a lot of women need to like maybe work on, or maybe work with a coach or someone that can like help
Mhm.
them just kind of get the wording right.
That's a great point. It's like changing the mindset to thinking of it as a marketing game, not just
Hmm
sort of letting people know, like putting business terms to it. That's a great point, actually, Jill. I love that.
Thanks. Well, I know leadership and communication is your jam. So let's like talk about how like a mama can be that in her family.
Oh, well, it's funny. When I do talks, even at the highest, like stuffiest corporate settings, there's a great Sekou Andrews quote, and he's a spoken word artist and a keynote speaker, and he says, "The best way to relate to human beings is to be a human being." It's such a simple quote, but I just love it because it's so true. And I find that when I'm speaking even to, bankers in suits, I still am up there as me, myself, the mom, the wife, the speaker, the everything. So the content that I bring is mostly related to my personal life, and then I apply it to a business setting. So in
Mhm.
leadership talks, for example, I just gave a leadership talk earlier this week, and the three examples I give, the first one is leadership lessons I learned from my 9-year-old daughter's basketball team this past season. And it's like, you realize pretty quickly people kind of it sort of lets their guard down and they go, "Oh, that's I can relate to that. I have a 9-year-old daughter too. We all at work, it's like we feel." Do you remember that social media post years ago that was like LinkedIn, Facebook, Tinder, Twitter, whatever it was, and you put the picture that
Yes.
sort of corresponds with who you're putting out in those spaces. And it was sort of a fun, silly thing for people to take part of in on social media. But it was so really profound in other ways because it was like calling us all out on you put this face and this persona on each of these
Mhm.
different platforms, but really you're a combination of all of that. So you don't need to pretend that you're only this in that space and only that in the other space. So I find it kind of disarms people in a corporate setting. And the same is true for the opposite. When I am home, we used to, I grew up having family meetings, like, and we would have
Mm.
a scribe for the meeting, and we would have an agenda for the meeting, and we would treat it like a business meeting. Now, Jake and I don't have family meetings. We don't treat it like that, but we'll do things like we'll have when we're eating or we don't ever eat meals together. I love to do that. We just happen to not have a lifestyle that's really conducive to that at the time. So we've let ourselves off the hook for that. We do hot tub time. So we do at least once or twice a week. We're all typically in the hot tub together as a family, and we'll go around and share highs and lows for the week. What was
Mm.
a great thing you had this week? What was something that wasn't so great? And I don't mean to like trust me. I'm not saying it's like everyone communicates perfectly. No one ever cuts each other off and everyone wants to hear each other's highs and lows.
Right.
They're still kids, right? It's still a family, but we treat it like my husband got the idea from a company that he used to
Mhm.
work with that did highs and lows. So there are lots of things that can transfer from one to the other that kind of work in both settings.
Yeah, I had someone else on a long time ago, but she talked about, same sort of thing. Like she just, quit her corporate role and is now working for her husband's company, but they do a lot of
Mm,
those family meetings, highs and lows, budget meetings, and I think, you know, thinking about a successful business, you kind of have to have all those parts to run a successful
mhm,
business, right? That has to all
mhm.
be communicated, has to be looked at, goals have to be made. And it's almost like, why don't we do that more as a family unit? Because like you think about it, like that's one of the things that lights me up is when my husband and I make goals together. And I'm like, okay,
Yes.
let's do it. Like, I want, like, what do you want?
Yes.
What do you, and I'm the same way. I'm like, let's do it. Let's write it down. What kind of goal do you want to go for? Is it going to be a financial goal? Is it going to be is it going to be, let's get together twice a month on a date, just something like that. But like when we like sit down and put it on paper and like really talk about it, that gets me excited because I just feel like we're on the same page working on on the same team, right?
Yes. Oh, I love that you guys do that too. We're nerds like that too. A couple years ago, we both took a day off from our actual jobs, like took a vacation day to do exactly that, to kind of
Mm,
map out what we want. Because we have a lot of like side projects or did as a couple that weren't our full-time jobs at the time. Now kind of part of it is for me. But
yeah.
yeah, it's and it's fun to do that with the kids too. You're right. It's the same thing you can do with school or with sports with them, right? What's your goal this year? Do you want to start on this team? Do you want to
Mm,
be able to play two sports at once. What are ways you can do that? And what's a conversation you need to have with the coach? I mean, we have when our kids were itty bitty. Now we don't do it as much because they've done it and they're pretty good about it. But when they were little, when we would have guests come over for our podcast, Jake and I co-host a podcast, and when we would have guests come to our home because that's where we film it if it's not Zoom, they would meet our kids, and it's not great. Look, it's a casual podcast. We have a lot of fun. It's a professional setting. We're asking people to come over and do this thing. So we said, kids, you're going to be meeting these people. You need to shake hands, make eye
mm,
contact, say hello, nice to meet you, offer up your name, smile. And we would literally practice with them. We role play. We pretend, hey, I'm so and so, and we kind of have fun with them. We make it a game. They think it's silly, but we would role play it just like you would, in a corporate workshop training that I do now with adults, saying get up and give your pitch. It's like you can't have the first time that you do it in real life be the first time that you do it. It's no different with meeting somebody when you're 10 and shaking hands and making eye contact with a grown up than it is for someone who's about to deliver a big presentation at work.
I've heard that a lot with toddler tips, as far as like going to the
Mm.
dentist, going to the doctor, doing a lot of the role play with a stuffed animal or a baby doll or whatever. And that's
Oh, I
funny you
love
say that
that.
because we're actually just now doing that. We're going on a vacation and we're going to be eating out. And like, we literally, my 2-year-old is a COVID baby. So she's been to a restaurant maybe twice in her life. We just don't eat
Mhm.
out that much as a family. And we've been doing every night at the table. I come around, hello, how's the Sutton family doing tonight? And I'm like, are there any food allergies at the table? And I start asking all these questions because they have not experienced this. And I want them
Yeah.
to be a little bit prepared when we go in and say, you know, can I start you off with a beverage? And just kind of using different
Jill, I
language
love
every
that
time we
so
do it.
cute. What a great idea. And
It's
you're
been
making it fun for
so
them.
fun. And
That's
every night they
cute.
ask, like, hey, come around, be my waiter, be my waiter. They're like
Oh, I
asking and stuff.
love
So it's
it.
been really fun. But that is a great idea. And you hear about that, practice your elevator pitch, knock it down to 30 seconds or less kind of thing and be able to get your point across. And yeah, that practice works.
It does. It does. I love that you do that. What a cute idea.
It's been really fun. I'm
Yeah.
hoping it works when we
I
go.
know. You know what though? Even if it doesn't, I feel like if you get to the restaurant and you tell the waiter that you've been doing that and they're at least bought in for like 5 seconds, you'll endear them to you so much that they'll be much more forgiving for like
Yes,
messes left on the, you know what? It's truly,
that's
it's like
true.
getting on a
That's true.
plane and before your kid starts crying, handing out candy and saying, sorry, this is
Hmm.
like if my kid starts crying, you've heard people say that, right? It's like, then they're
Yes.
much more, they're like, okay, well, they realize what's going on.
Yes, yes. Well, pre-COVID, we did a lot of traveling with the kids on the airplanes. My
Mhm.
family's all on the West Coast. So we do a lot of rehearsing, honestly. So it's been good
Yeah, good.
and stressful.
Yeah, right. You're like, good, mostly.
Yes. So tell me, I guess, with this new venture, not really new anymore. I mean, two
Yeah.
years. So could you see it being this successful this quick?
I mean, I'll be totally honest. I hoped it would be,
Right?
like I was definitely going in with the like faux, I got this, girl boss, I can do it,
Yes.
but like in the behind my back, crossing my fingers, like, I don't know, is it gonna happen? Is it gonna work? And I have been pleasantly surprised and shocked by how quickly things have picked up and how the amount of the volume that has come in and the caliber of clients that I'm getting honestly. And I will say I feel extremely blessed and very lucky and I know that I'm good at my job. I know that I'm good
Yeah.
at what I do. And I'm not 23 trying to do it. I'm so glad I launched this business when I have almost
Mm,
20 years of experience in the real world as a news anchor on live television in a very high stakes, high stress
mhm,
situation, dealing with news that is all across the world, all in our community, and deals with. So, I have there's some guts to what I'm bringing to the
mhm,
table now.
mhm,
When I thought of doing this before, I would have launched a business like this speaking as a trainer who had only ever trained or spoken. And
mhm,
there's just, I mean, you can't replace life experience. There's nothing wrong with people who listen, if you're good at something, you can teach and you can be a great communicator, and it's
mhm,
wonderful. I am glad that I now know that the sort of oomph that comes with the messages that I bring are not only what I like to call it the infotainment model. It's a news term that I used at one point where news has turned into infotainment, right? You're giving people information, but you're also keeping them entertained.
mhm,
And that's very much how I run my workshops and how I do my keynotes because people have to be entertained. There's too much going on for you not to keep their attention. I know I can be engaging and connect with audiences because that was my job for so long. And I know that is a natural quality I have. I love it. I love people, and it's a good natural way to do that. But now, because of the life experience and job experience I had, I know that there is weight behind that and true credible knowledge that comes
mhm,
with what I'm teaching as well.
mhm.
So I am pleasantly surprised, or I don't even know if surprised is the word, but I'm affirmed, I guess, confirmed in what I
Right.
was hoping would
Yes.
happen, has happened. But I also am still living that life of now I kill to eat.
Mhm,
So there's
mhm.
every month or whatever the case, I'm booked now. I think my furthest out booking right now is for next May, maybe,
Wow.
which feels great. But then I'm like, okay, well, what about after May? What's going to happen in
Yeah, yeah,
June? And
yeah.
it's still a little stress like that, but I like that exhilaration too. I kind
Right.
of feed off that energy too.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Um, what does it mean to you to be living in your legacy?
Well, I'm doing it quite literally, aren't I? I mean, a
Mm,
third generation workshop trainer, speaker, et cetera, however you want to define that, is a quite literal thing in my life. So I guess the next step for me living in my legacy would be helping my kids find what they want theirs to be.
mhm,
And all I know to do for that is to continue to live my life in that way, right? Do work
mhm.
that I love, that I know I'm good at, that helps to support our family and give us the lifestyle that we like and that we can build together, and hope that they are then able to find the same thing for themselves.
Like you said, just trying to be our authentic self and make choices that align with our values, and having our kids see that, having it be public, talking about the conversation with you and your husband in front of the kids so that they can kind of see you teasing that out and saying,
Mhm.
that I don't know, that I don't feel aligned with that. That just doesn't feel really good. I think I'm going to tell them no or whatever, you know what I mean? And then,
Yeah.
I think that that's really important, having these conversations in the open too.
Mhm. That's a great point. Doing it's like they say, "Oh, fight in front of your kids and make up in front of your kids too," so they see the
Yes.
full circle, right, of how an argument goes. Yeah, that's great. I
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm. Very cool. Where can people find you, Paige?
My website is pagefailing.com, and it's kind of tricky spelling. My first name is Paige, just like page in a book, Page. Failing is F like Ford, EHLING.com. And I used to say F like Frank, but my oldest son's name is Ford. And he was like, "Why don't you say F like Ford?" And I was like, "Okay, good point." So people know what a Ford is too. So pagefailing.com. And then on social media online, I live the most. My favorite spot is Instagram, and I'm just at Page Failing, all one word. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I typically co-post a lot of that stuff, but that's kind of my favorite spot on the socials if people are looking to interact that way. I would love to meet and hear from any and all of you.
Yes. And then you have a podcast.
And yes, thank you. Jake and I have a podcast, Date Night with Jake and Paige. And we do that kind of as they come up sporadically when we have fun guests that we want to talk with or a topic that he and I want to tackle together. And then we also co wrote a book called Holy Crap, We're Pregnant, which is a he said, she said, uh, uh, at least hopefully, humorous take on the different parts of pregnancy.
That's awesome. Now, one of the things I love that you do on Instagram is your 3 and 30. Do you have a favorite or one that you just really love?
Ooh, a favorite 3 in 30. Let's see. Okay. I'll come up with this on the spot. Ready?
Ready?
So here's 3 tips to make the most of your day today in any setting, whether you are in a professional setting or out, at the soccer game picking up the kids from practice, that you can do to make your life better and help you step towards your goals. Number 1, meet someone new and initiate that meeting if you need to. Number 2, ask someone a question other than just how are you or something having to do with that day. Make a comment with them that has something to do not with their appearance. And number 3, follow up. So send an email, connect with someone on social media, or find somebody on LinkedIn or wherever it is that you live online and make it a point to have some type of continued communication with them.
Awesome.
Is
Oh,
that, I
thank
don't know
you
if I
so
got that
much.
in 30 seconds.
I think you did.
Okay.
I'll time it
And that
later.
works. All of those tips work whether you're just sort of looking to make a new friend or make a business contact.
Yeah. So good. Well, Paige, thank you so much for your time and joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jill. This was really lovely. I appreciate your asking me to join you.
Thank you so much for joining today. I appreciate you guys listening so much and all your support. This has been such a fun thing to do this year. I would love it if you guys would follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts, write a review if you feel so led. That really does help boost the podcast. And if you want to jump on YouTube and follow us there, it is going to be fun to be getting all these videos out, and hopefully I'll have another one out soon. Also, if you want to join the email list, I am the one that personally writes all those emails. It's not something that's going to flood your inbox every day or even every week or even every month. It's just when I actually have time to write them and have something that I want to communicate to you guys that seems important to me, or to just fill you in on what's going on over here. But you can also sign up on that email list at jillgsutton.com. And I hope to see you over there. Thank you.